pastor's ankle, and I know a few years ago, Johnny and I kind of went through that. I had a shoulder surgery, and Johnny had a back surgery, and you know, I think that brought us closer together because there was things that we hadn't done in quite a while. And you know, sometimes I wonder if God does things like that because when we're down, who do we look to? We look to Him far more than we do when things are going along really well. God is so good. He's always so good to us, and I don't know how I would ever live my life without Him. And I'm just so blessed and thankful for all that He's done for us over the last year, but all of our lives. I'm just so thankful. Go ahead, Jim.
Strong tower and Would you stand with us and we sing He Is Here?
I didn't crash the computer this year, so we're off to a good start. It's good to be here this morning and to be able to share with you the happenings in Romania this past spring. I couldn't help but think before we get started, looking at the bulletin, hearing the testimonies this morning, how much that we as a church, church local, church universal, seem to be under attack. Pastor breaks an ankle, our daughter has a recurrence of cancer, and when you look, Kathy is struggling with cancer, as is Pat, and there's just so much on here. I hesitate to name names for fear of missing somebody. Brother Harry Moore is on his way to West Virginia today for the funeral of his last sister, who was 92 years old and lived a long and good life, but nonetheless, while she's no longer present here, but with the rest of the family in heaven, it's still a difficult time for the families. A pastor friend of mine out in Texas, I saw on Facebook where someone had posted the medical problems they were going through with their small child. And he made the comment, this is a verse that comes to my mind frequently, he said. Exodus 14:14, the Lord will fight for you, and you have only to be silent. We can complain, we can fuss when all these things are happening, but we only have to be silent because the Lord is for us. We can just praise God for that. So as you can see on the screen, I'm going to talk to you about Romania. I kept waiting to see, last week it didn't happen, and this week I almost missed it because I had my back turned. Pastor comes skating down that center aisle on a scooter, making an appearance. I told him I saw that he was dressed to preach today, he turned me down, so he gave him the opportunity. But on April 15th, Cliff Hartley, Chris Grilly, youth pastor from Trinity Church in Ashland, Janice Watts from Green Valley in Mount Vernon, and I met at Ray Smythe's home about noontime, and then we loaded up and we drove to Detroit, where we boarded our plane for Bucharest, Romania, with a layover in Paris, and we arrived late Tuesday afternoon and were met by our brother Mose Marin, who we call Moses. He took us by van to the seminary, and we met with the rest of the team from Florida and Texas. So Wednesday morning, we get up, everybody's bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, and jet-lagged, and after breakfast, we took a team picture. There it goes. I thought I broke it already. There was 14 of us, along with Dr. Morris, who is the rector at the seminary. So there's starting left to right, Janet, Alan Seidel, Albert, Janice, Betty and Cecil Lewis, Barbara, Chris, Ray, myself, Dr. Morris, Cliff, and Tim Ellis. This year, Janet and Albert and Chris, along with Betty and Cecil, were on their first mission trip to Romania. It was Janice's first mission trip ever, but the rest of them had been on other mission trips, but this was everyone's first trip to Romania. Big team. The logistics were a little difficult from time to time. But the first order of business was attending the chapel service in the seminary. And students all and staff all gather, and the Lewises did special music. Brother Cecil gave a brief testimony, and then Brother Cliff Hartley, our director of missions for our association, brought the morning message. And you can see he's flanked on his right by Billy Graham, and on his left by Charles Spurgeon. That became a bit interesting as the trip went on as well. After the chapel service, Brother Cliff remained behind along with Ray. Brother Cliff taught a 2-hour class to senior students, and the rest of us went with Moses to his church in the Colentina section of Bucharest. The women took the kids and went into the school building there that you saw pictured here. Oops, sorry. The kids went in there. They had their own program. The rest of us went into the primary building having a service. This guy did special music, and he decided he wanted to sing a song to us in English. And apparently he had done it last year too. And he would make a good Elvis impersonator. I mean, he sounded just like Elvis Presley, and he sang a gospel song. And if you've ever listened to an Elvis Presley gospel tape, I'm not sure he wasn't lip syncing. He was that close in voice. But then Chris Grilly, he spoke as Emmanuel, who's an associate pastor there with Moses, and Brother Tim, they both spoke. But then we went out to, following a late lunch, we went out to a group of houses, you really can't call it a village, that they have named Mama India. Gypsies originated in India, and over the centuries have migrated around the world, and they called this place Mama India. And you can see in the background there by that blue barrel a well. I'll tell you a little bit more about that in just a second. But the women took the kids and they did their own program, and they did a craft. And in the meantime, while that was going on, they gathered some adults just outside of the fence where they were, and they did a kind of impromptu service, and they gave each of the adults a Bible. But to give you an idea of the conditions they're living in, that's, for lack of a better term, a house, and the whole surrounding area there. But that well is the only well in that village, and it's contaminated. We saw people actually washing up in mud puddles because they were fearful of the water in the well. Moses explained to us that they could have the well cleaned for $400, or they could drill a new well for $700. And Janet, who's from Florida in the winter, snowbird, lives in Ohio in the summer, was so moved by that she got on Facebook and started a FundMe page seeking $700. You may have seen it. It was shared several times. And, but through it all, within just a few days, the goals of $700 was met. And she was able to get that into cash and present it to Moses on the evening of our last day there in Romania. After that lunch, we split up into about 3, maybe 4 groups, and the Lewises and I went out to this little mission point that they set up an old army tent in a yard, and we had service there, and it was cold. By the time we actually started the service, the tent was full, and the Lewises gave testimony and sang, and I brought a message to the folks there. They're looking to, I think where that tent is now, they have the land. They were looking for funds to start building. So Thursday was a travel day. We traveled from Bucharest by car up to Bistrita, about a 6-hour drive that took us 12. We had to do some sightseeing along the way. And we finally got there and settled in at the camp, which became our base of operations for the next 4 days. Ruben Chikai, who's our primary translator the last number of years, became the director of that camp. And they bring in as many as 30 kids, and they house them and feed them and do programs with them. So that's where we were for 4 days. And then Friday evening, we gathered to split into groups. Brother Cliff and I getting ready to head out, and of all places, we went to the Pentecostal church in Bistrita. I had to grin when Vivian was singing, and it was singing, "Holy, holy, I need to raise my hand to you." Yeah, and I'm in a Pentecostal church. Yeah. The super conservative guy from Holmes County that should be wearing blue felt and speaking Pennsylvania Dutch is in a Pentecostal church, and not only am I there, but I am preaching. It was interesting. But apparently we were all so stunned by it that that's about the only picture that was taken. Most of them are talking, and I think I'm sitting here thinking, what in the world am I doing here? But I had told Brad once upon a time that I thought I was a closet Pentecostal anyhow. I'm just so conservative I can't get my hand up. But the next morning, Brother Reuben married last year after the team left, and they have a baby boy that's on the way come this July, so we had an impromptu baby shower for them. The women brought gifts, and the guys did what we did best. We brought cash. But we that afternoon we did a children's ministry. It took us out to a little Baptist church, and they brought in the kids, and they did puppets and crafts and whatnot. That's Janice, second in, Barb with the blue puppet. On the outside, that is Alexa, or Alexander, and that's Rebecca. 25 and 14. They're Reuben's sisters, and they helped. They did the translation. They actually did the voices while the two ladies just moved the mouths of the puppets. We had that program, and then Sunday morning we gathered up, heading out for a Sunday morning. It was Easter here. It was Palm Sunday there this year. Ray and then Chris in the middle, and then of course me. Chris has never owned a suit prior to this trip, and in fact Ray gave it to him the morning we were leaving. Here, try this on. We'd also told him, or Ray had also told him for months he wasn't allowed to have a beard in Romania. It was a sign of disrespect. And when Brother Simon was here from Romania, Chris was looking at him and saying, "Wait, can you have beards in Romania when you preach?" And he says, "Well, yeah." That got things started. So as I said, it was Palm Sunday there. We split up into three groups. One group went to one Baptist church. The other group went to the next Baptist church. And Janice, Albert, and I, you guessed it, we went to the Pentecostal church. And we had a couple of accordions and some guitars and singers. And I think there was even a horn of some type or another there. But they were praising God. But I was able, apparently I did well, and I got asked back to preach a second message. So that's where we spent our morning. But that evening we went to, I guess it's Reuben's now home church. Ray sang several selections, and Alexander, that I pointed out to you, was sitting next to me in the service, and Ray was singing. And of course he's singing in English. They don't have a clue, but they enjoyed the music, just like we don't have a clue what they're singing but we enjoy it. And then we think they're singing a hymn, like, it sounds like our music, and you start trying to sing the words like we know it, and somebody will look at you and go, "That's not it." Okay. But the amazing thing is, they can be singing a song like Amazing Grace, and they're singing it in Romanian. I can't remember the words in English. It just, blows my mind. But Ray sang, and then the last song he says, "Now I want to sing this for the children." And so he looks to the kids that were gathered there and singing, and Alexander pokes me in the ribs, and she says, "They can't understand a word he's saying." That was worth the whole trip right there. Brother Chris brought a message. How did that get there? But at any rate, I guess what I wanted to show you was Brother Cliff is there in the background. On the far picture, you can just see Brother Tim's head sticking above the podium. We didn't have a booster seat for him. Brother Cliff on the outside. Tim spoke briefly, as did Chris. And then Brother Cliff brought a powerful message that evening. At the end of the message, he gave an invitation, and five people were saved. Now I know why that. One of them was Alexander, 14 years old, tears streaming down her face. And I told Reuben, I said, "Now Reuben, you got to let us know when she's baptized. We want photo evidence, so to speak." Well, Brother Mike, that's a problem. Why is there? Well, in Romania, we don't baptize till they're 15, 16. Take a picture. Send it to me. Oh, okay. So Monday morning, it was another travel day, and we traveled all day from Bistrita down to Kamenest, and we settled in there and spent the night. Of course, got up the next morning, had breakfast. Monday night, I was told, "I suppose you have to go to Satano." And I said, "No supposed to it. We're going." He said, "Okay, well, you have to do it tomorrow because it's the only day that's free." Works for me. So that was one of my personal highlights of the trip, again, going to Satano, and even more so because I got to take several of our team members with us. I took Barb and Janet and Janice and Chris and Cliff and Ray. They all went out with me, and we went out to the Satano Church. That's the new parsonage there on the, I guess you're right. And we had lunch with Simon and Alana, and people from the Baco Baptist Church that were there to help. But after church, or after lunch rather, there was 30 youth that showed up by last count. They just kept coming in. And we played games, and then they started challenging us with one of those kids. And they got me up there. Basically what they're doing is they start at this corner with a cup and they just stack them up, and whoever gets done first wins. Well, the boys aren't any dummies in that village because the girls won every match. We kind of figured that one out pretty quick. Two young men there come from Baco. They're twins. They kind of lead the music for the services when they're able to be there. Their names are Eddie and Denny, and they're just great servants. They help with the puppets, they help with the children's ministry. As I said, they led the music, and I've known them since 2001. There's Eddie and Denny. Their mother is the administrator, which I guess means janitor of the church there in Baco. They live in the apartment there. So there they were in 2001, and then several years later playing some soccer in the churchyard. But after the children's program, after people sang, after they did special music, then I brought the message and gave a message on you're an original. And I did the PowerPoint that you can see in the background in Romanian. And I had Ruben help me translate a few parts of it, and then I used Google Translate. Don't ever do that. But the screenshot was, I know I'm somebody, but it was only in Romanian. Because God don't make no junk. Should have changed that screen a little better. But I know I'm somebody because God doesn't make no junk. And while I told him it's not proper grammar, it's nonetheless true. And I used as my text Psalm 103, to know the Lord is God, and it is He who made us, and we are His. And because of that, and because of Jeremiah 1:5, before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Because of that, you are not only an original, but you were special. As I said, Ray brought special music, and then Cliff spoke. That's Pastor Christie from the Baco Church. There's a bit of a smirk on his face there because Cliff gets up, and he was talking about American Sign Language, and he said, my name is Cliff. Now you do it. And everybody went, what? And Christy starts laughing, and he goes, my name is Cleve. Now you do it. So they all said, Cleve. I had the honor then at the end of the service of presenting some funds for food and for roof replacement. We were able to, when they were in the country, Simon and Ona, they visited churches from Michigan to, I think, North Carolina and back, where his two sisters live, visiting in churches and giving testimony, showing a PowerPoint, seeking funds for a variety of ministries, sending gypsy kids to high school. They leave Satano on Sunday night, and they go into Baco. They stay in a boarding school, and on Mondays and Tuesdays, Simon and Ona and a teacher tutor them on math and other subjects. And then Wednesday through Friday, or through Sunday, then they live out in the village, in the parsonage. But they made it known when they were here, right before we went to Romania, that the roof of the church had to be replaced. And we were, as a team, were able to give them $6,500 to complete that project. And in addition to that, we gave them money for the food staples that we've done for several years. Simon was, his mouth just kind of dropped open when we said, here's $6,500, fix the roof. And near tears when we made the presentation. So that was a great day. That was a highlight. But ever since, and I've shown you this picture before, that I visited this home and visited this man literally on his deathbed, who had been in a coma, and said while he was in a coma, Jesus told him to go back to your home, tell your relatives they need to know Jesus. And he did, and then within a couple of days he died. When we walked out of that house, that was their kitchen. It was a clay stove outside, and that was their supper. It looked like, as I've told you before, chicken bones and rotten vegetables, it looked like to me. But ever since then, I've had the burden for our team to provide funding to buy these food staples of flour and sugar and rice and cooking oil, and when we can get them, potatoes. And because of the generosity of Orville Baptist Church and the Faithful Followers class and the Generations class, we were able to give them $2,000, and they fed 60 families this year. And they've already made distribution. There's the van loaded up. This year, 2 years ago, he fussed at me because he had to make 3 trips because he couldn't get it all in the truck. But here's a few of the families. There we go. Let me go back one. Here's a few of the families that were benefactors of the gift. The woman on the left lives in one room in a house that looks like that blue one that I showed you just a couple of moments ago. Dirt floors, those are blankets for carpeting. And she's pretty much homebound, and so she was a benefactor. Unfortunately, these kids, so many of them, many of their parents, one of the parents will go to another country to work and hopefully send money back. But there are too many cases in this village where both parents leave and the oldest child becomes the parent. And the children, or the church, helps these families where they can with food and clothing and whatnot. But the roof, there's the church. You can see, I'm not sure who it is sitting up on the peak of that thing. But whenever it snows, not only do they have to get up on that metal roof and clear the snow off the roof, oh, but no, they've got to crawl in the attic space because the snow, you can see the light coming in, the snow settles in there, and they get up there with a hammer and beat the ice that forms, put it in little buckets and tubs and carry it outside. So the roof really needs replaced. The wood is rotting, and they just use logs for trusses. They're going to put a truss roof in and metal and make it as it should be. But no trip to Satino is incomplete without a photo op with my friend Costell. I used to say my little friend Costell, but he's not so little anymore. Pastor Simon said that Costell lost his job because we gave him the money to replace the roof, because he was one of the ones that crawled up in there to shovel it out. But I've been associated with Costell since he was 5 or 6. He's 26 now, and still in the village, works in Bucko, still involved in the church, which is a blessing. The rest of the team had gone to Pretoria, I think. That was the next day. Wednesday, on the 24th, we went to Bahush and Blagesta. And that was the Lewises and myself. And Pastor Chonka has been ministering in that building there for a number of years. There used to just be a house, and over the years, funding has been given to them, and they've opened up the building. They've turned it into a church. And we had a service there, like all the other services, an old B12 organ that this guy was trying to play. But he was serving God, and a guy on the other side of the room was playing an accordion, which is pretty prevalent in gypsy churches. And then we went out to Blagest, and we had another outdoor service. It's a mission point. It was mostly women and children there. And there was one young lady there who I called the sergeant of arms. She was standing there beside these kids, and every time one of them would move, she'd go, shh, shh. Until finally, pastor's wife shushed her, and but the Lewises gave testimony, and Tim and I both spoke briefly. It was another one of those cold services. But, the rest of the team went out to Pretoria, but then on Thursday, I get my days mixed up. We split again. This was a Pentecostal trip. One team went to the Pentecostal church in Common Nest. Another part of the team went to Onest, to Pastor John's church, and I got to go to Common Nest. Al and Janet and I were there, brought the message that evening. Al introduced the team and gave greetings to them. But then on Friday was the second really big day for me. They said, well, you're going to Tig Oak now. And I said, okay. The old Brethren church that you have now, or the Gypsy church? And they said, Gypsy church. And I went, all right. Because they feed the homeless there every Friday. And we're not just talking soups and bread. This is full course meal. They start out with a soup, a main course and a dessert, and they serve the people. They don't go through a line. They sit at tables and they take it out plate by plate, hand it to them, make them feel special, if for no other reason. And so we got to help serve. We tried to get in the kitchen. Well, two of them tried to get in the kitchen. I stayed out of the road. But I was willing to serve. But you can see they sit outside at tables. And they eat in shifts. They come in, they sit, those people eat, they leave, another shift comes in. They do 2 or 3 shifts. So we're stacked up, ready to go out and serve. The young lady in the foreground's name is Deidre. She was our translator for the day, and she is a senior engineering student in the university. Albert got to cut up, they gave him the challenge of cutting that little cake into 50 little squares. They get dessert, they just don't get much. But this whole operation is based on faith alone. There's no funding guaranteed to them. The government doesn't help them at all. They are dependent upon the generosity of others to buy what they need to feed the people. And they've been doing it for 5 years without missing a meal. They plant a huge garden. But in addition to feeding, they also have, you'll see on the right side of the screen, those bunk beds. There's 2 bunk beds in this little outbuilding, a bath and a laundry that they're able to temporarily house some of the homeless people. But because they have to feed outside, the main floor of that small building is their church in addition to the kitchen. They want to change this attic space into a worship area. So we're not going to do anything fancy. We're just going to throw up some insulation little bit of board and a little bit of flooring, and we can sit about 60 people up here. So we as a team provided them $1,000 to do that, and they were going to start construction, but whoever was going to do it backed out, so they're looking for somebody else. But Brother George, pictured there on the left, is the chef, and he is an honest-to-goodness chef. He has competed and won in the Romanian version of Chopped. He's got, instead of $10,000, they give you a set of knives that he has hanging on the wall. It was a great day. There was a couple of faux pas that happened. We were supposed to have a service and didn't, and ended up going to a birthday party, and they fed us, so it was all good. But this is such a great ministry. Albert and I were moved enough that we reached into our pocket and pulled out cash and said, here, go buy groceries or plates or whatever, whatever this will help with. So that's going to be another one of my projects in future years. And a Romania mission trip wouldn't be complete without the annual Zidell Fest. Alan Seidel's grandfather, I think it was, immigrated to the United States from Romania, and their name was Zidell at that time. And he found family there a number of years ago. So we always get together for a barbecue one day while we're there. And as you can see, we aren't starving when we come back. Amazingly, I didn't gain any weight. The next day, of course, was Easter Sunday there, and our last day of ministry. This brother brought the Bible study at the Bako Church. We split up into 4 groups again. My group went to Bako. Another group got up at 5 in the morning and left for Piatra Nem for a sunrise service. Another went to, I think, Onești, and again to the Pentecostal church. But this brother brought the morning Bible study, their version of Sunday school, and I learned while this was going on that he was a local policeman, and I didn't get an opportunity to speak with him. Pastor Christie's mic was live when I leaned over to him and said, "Did you say he was a policeman?" And he said, "Yeah," as he turned it off. And I see the heads popped up. When church was over, he was gone. I don't know if he had to go to work, or if he didn't want to meet with me for fear of I'd chastise him about being a policeman. But hey, brother, we were in the same line of work once upon a time. The youth choir gave a presentation, and Albert got up and gave them some words of encouragement. Then Brother Chris spoke to him, and then being Easter, Christ is risen, Christos andiat. So when I got up to speak, that was the greeting that I gave them when I walked to the pulpit, Christos andiat. And they responded in Romanian, he is risen indeed. And I looked out to him and I said, I've been waiting all week to say that. Hence the reason Christy and this young lady are laughing. But I brought a message, and then we went to lunch. And then the team in Piatra Nem came to Bako, and we went to Piatra Nem. And children gave a program. This little guy on the left, he quoted about a chapter of the Bible. And then just marched back to a seat and sat down. And the children's program, Brother Albert gave a testimony, as did Janice. Ray, of course, sang. And then I had the honor of once again bringing the message to the church there at Piatra Nem. So we were getting ready to leave Piatra Nem, and Pastor Marin, who was my translator, we all load up in the church van, and we go, we got to stop for fuel. And so Pastor Marin and Ray go into the gas station after pumping fuel. And Ray opens the door and says, it's going to be a bad or a long night. Why? Well, he just put gasoline in the diesel tank. Okay, yeah, that doesn't work well. So we kind of pushed the thing off to the side away from the pumps. He made a few phone calls and said, oh, the brother's coming. He's got a 7-passenger vehicle. He'll take you back to Common Est. It looked like a clown car. We were jammed in there like sardines for the 2-hour drive home. It was all 7 people, but not 7 people my size. But we made it home, and the next morning we rose and got ready to travel back to Bucharest. And you can't go to Romania, or I can't go to Romania without giving a passing, parting birthday gift to Pastor John. Gave him a rubber chicken and 2 rubber chicken slingshots. Many years ago, Pastor John was involved in an accident, and he swerved. He was passing a car, and the car he was passing swerved to miss the chicken, hit his car, and he was fussing about it, and I'm standing behind him going, back, 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 back. And he'd go and then shake his head, and I'd go, back, 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 back. And he turned around and he says, you tell him the gypsy hit that chicken, I didn't. Every year after that, he'd get some kind of chicken gift. So when I gave him the gift, he went into a bedroom. He comes back to the door, says, Mike. But we do it all in good fun. And then we had a parting photo from Pastor John's. We added 2 men. Jerry and Jay Raines from Church Starts International joined us about mid-trip. And Philomona is right there in front. Philomona helps cook. Pastor John's wife is Zenobia. And where'd Pastor John go? Oh, there he is, right beside me. Had to check, make sure he didn't have a knife. Wanted to keep my throat intact. We then went back drove down to Bacău and caught the train to Bucharest, which is back to the seminary. And Tuesday is an R&R day. We always go out. We take Dr. and Mrs. Morris out to a restaurant for our Last Supper, and a Last Supper for a team in Romania. This is a restaurant that's been there since the 1800s, and the inside looks like a church. It's just a fabulous place. But the team pays for that meal, and we have a good time. So we went. Dr. Morris asked us to go back to the chapel. He wanted to speak with us, and there's Cliff doing his Billy Graham impersonation. So we heard that all week, but they thought, you're just like Billy Graham. Oh, give us a break. But Brother Cliff had his own set of issues. He had arthritis so bad that he was in severe pain, and Zenobia doctored him up and got him healthy again, and gave him medication, and he came back, took it to his pharmacy, said, I need more of these pills. The guy looked at it and he said, I can't give you this. A doctor has to write a prescription. Well, we just went down to the store and bought them, yeah. Their system seems to work. But Dr. and Mrs. Morris told us about what the university is doing there, the seminary, what their church, which translate is Golgotha Church, which would transfer to Calvary Church, spoke to us about they were wanting to do some church planning in some villages outside of the city. So they presented us with some small gifts, little coffee cups type things. But then we got to thinking about it, and we still had money left. And so I went back and I gave Dr. Morris $1,174, and said, here, use this for your church planning. And maybe we can team up sometime in the future. So that was maybe the third highlight of the trip for me, being able to do that and being involved with Dr. Morris. But over the course of 11 days, we were gone 15 days for ministry. We actually ministered 11 days. We were in 25 churches. There were no less than 35 messages preached, triple that in testimonies and special music. We had 36 recorded professions of faith, ranging in age from 14 to 70. 38 people indicated that they desired to rededicate their lives. And because of the sacrificial giving of people like Orville Baptist Church and other faith-based organizations within the SBC, we were able to distribute $36,164 as Buckeye Central Area Association. Tim Ellis from Texas brought an additional $2,600 that we distributed. And so for a grand total of $38,784. It's the most money we've ever been able to distribute for a variety of causes, from building a church up in Panshu. They gave him $15,000 to complete the building. Cliff had worked all year trying to raise money for that purpose. The roof we were able to place on or help finish there at Satino, the food staples. Different people within the team would pull money out of their pocket and give to one of the pastors, saying, here, you need this. We gave $3,000 to Onesh to remodel their sanctuary. There's not been anything done with it in 20 years, and they didn't have the means. So Mose, we gave him $2,000 for his various projects. He always has a mission starting somewhere, in the Baptist Seminary, and the well, of course, at Mama Indy. So I have no idea what that is, but it's not on mine. So missions, and missions in Romania specifically, is more than just giving money. I'm convinced it's about building relationships. For me personally, witnessing the work in Satino with the Andronic family and with Costel, and a brother named Elvis, not the one that sang in Bucharest, but another Elvis. Someone has once said that people don't care how much you know unless they know how much you care. And I think we've shown that there, and I think that's why I like going back. We've built the relationships there in Satino with Costel, helping him through the years growing up. Now with Brother George there at Tigokna. The last slide that was supposed to pop up there was from Isaiah 6:8. Who will go for us? Here I am, send me. And our next trip to Romania is going to be in September of next year. We haven't determined the dates yet. And it's my belief that we can reduce the cost per person by $500 after working the numbers, depending on airfare. And I know my calling and my ministry has been international missions, specifically Romania, and even more specifically the Bacău region of Romania. And not everyone is called to do that. There's some people who will never go on an international mission trip. But there's missions. The church is missions. We have things going on around the state. We have things going on in other countries, across the United States, right here in our own community. And so my question that I think needs to be asked is, what is God calling you to do? What is God calling us to do? And maybe the better question is, are you willing to say, here I am, send me? That is the end of what I have on Romania this year. There are a bazillion other photographs. In fact, I'll pick up a flash drive tomorrow that has 900 photos on it. You have to love first-time missionaries. They're like what I say, a Japanese tourist with a motor drive Nikon. You know, it's like a movie. But there are so many, so many memories, so many opportunities, so many people who are open to the gospel in Romania, especially among the Roma people group, the Gypsies. And that's where I focus my ministry when I'm there, and hope to continue as long as God will allow me to go. So the question would be, as John comes to close us in a hymn of invitation, is God calling you to some type of mission? Is it something local? Is it something international? All you need to do is say, here I am, send me. And be willing, and God will use you from that point. But before you can go on mission, you have to know Him as your personal Lord and Savior. You can't be a missionary for Christ without first knowing Christ. So the key would be, if you don't know Jesus, you need to know Him. Once you know Him, then we can figure out what God has you to do.